the only thing that American films have really innovated, and that is the American Western. It is special and original to this country.
Old Tucson is a bridge in a waterless desert.
Thank you very much.
Not a geographical bridge, but a passageway for the mind between actuality and imagination. It's a place of paradox. On the one hand, an authentic reproduction of the West as it was. On the other, the location where people across the globe have envisioned the American West as they wish it had been. Out of fact, it has created legend. On the mythological strata of legend, it has in turn rebuilt physical fact. This cyclic and continuing interplay of reality and illusion is the essence of Old Tucson. It is both unique and representative. Unique because there is no other site quite like it. Representative in the way it physically sums up the forces and materials that compose America's one great contribution to world folklore, the Western movie. To speak of the Western movie is itself paradoxical. Almost from their start, the movies were Western. The first big commercial success of American film was the great train robbery. And that one reel of celluloid in 1903 turned the industry from a gimmicky side street peep show into the first new medium of artistic expression the world had known since the printing press. What had been static became dynamic. From that time on, the camera began to move. The trouble with the early Westerns was that they were Easterns with painted backdrops and modern city sewers cropping up all across the old frontier. So when the camera moved outdoors, it had to keep moving west. Three wise men of the early cinema moved with it. Samuel Goldwyn of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and United Artists, longtime tycoon and producer Jesse L. Lasky, and the screen's classic master of multitudinous magnitude, Cecil B. DeMille. The three future moguls needed space, sun, and sky, and the replacement of spurious by authentic backgrounds. Arizona was a natural choice. Not so natural was the choice of northern Arizona. When the three tycoons-to-be detrained at Flagstaff, they found not only sun, sky, but also snow. Shaking the snow from their patent leather shoes and gray silk spats, they took the next train out and ended up on a sandy strip of soil with the archaic and unlikely name of Hollywood. Because of a snowfall in the Arizona highlands, a chunk of Southern California became the movie mecca of the world. But the true north of its compass was set due west. There were giants in the Hollywood earth in those days. Serious actors like William S. Hart with his Shakespearean background. Tom Mix, a genuine soldier of fortune and one-time cowpuncher who knew it like it really was. Spirited, reckless Ken Maynard, probably the greatest stuntman star of them all. For over a decade, Hollywood was riding high on a billion-dollar Bronco. Meanwhile, back at the ranches, up in the mountains, deep in the canyons of Arizona, there was too much beauty and authenticity to be ignored completely. In 1912, the Lubin brothers came from Philadelphia to make films there. A two-reeler found the great Douglas Fairbanks Sr. heading south. And the greatest romantic idol of the silent screen, Rudolph Valentino, billowed into Arizona as the son of the sheik. But more miraculous than the translation of southwestern desert into Arabian sand dunes was a technical revolution movies were undergoing. They had started to talk. Looming metallically on every cactus, concealed microphones rode herd on a new passel of western stars. The new dimension of sound only accentuated the western fan's demand for background authenticity in his favorite horse operas. Gone were the days when a director could say, "A tree is a tree, a rock is a rock, shoot it in Griffith Park." The quest for authenticity reached a high point in 1939 when Columbia Pictures recreated for its epic Arizona a complete western town. 12 miles from modern Tucson, the studio built Old Tucson, a meticulous reproduction of the old Pueblo, as the early pioneers referred to their city. The standard of accuracy set for detail made Arizona a landmark western, a standard that the big budget films that followed on its heels had to match and meet. This living linkage of actuality and imagination marks Old Tucson today, standing spraddle-legged as a gunfighter with one foot in fact and one in fantasy. It was a heroic fantasy, and it demanded heroes. Among the stars, a handful stand out not merely by the force of personality, but with the insider's knowledgeability of Western film that arises from a devotion to the medium that spans a lifetime's career. John Wayne is that kind of actor. Beginning as a prop man in the 20s, he is so linked with the outdoor film that in the public mind, Wayne and Western are synonyms. A critic once remarked, "Some people say John Wayne grew up with Western movies. In fact, Western movies grew up with John Wayne."
Well, as far as Old Tucson is concerned, it was built for Bill Holden and Gene Arthur, the Adobe part of the street, for a picture called Arizona. And then I came along, and since then we've been building Wooden Street, about 2 buildings every picture I made, so it's been made right off my back. I've jumped out or fallen out of about every window on the street, and I love it. As far as the Westerns are concerned, the horse is the best vehicle for action that our medium has. You can show speed with a speedboat or a motorcycle or a train. But when you want action, we cut to the horse. Besides that, the stories we tell are American folklore. The folklore of every country is understood by everyone in every other country. They're always basic stories of love, hate, and action. And I believe that through the Western, we have made the American folklore the most popular in the world.
John Wayne and his breed of men stalked the dusty streets of legend to leave a permanent trace across the landscape of our imaginations. In the track of their booted and spurred footsteps, there plodded, tenacious as any bounty hunter, another group of movie makers, the great directors. They were the pioneers and innovators, men who took the grammar of film to invent a new lexicon for legend. They blazed new trails across a flickering frontier, and among the permanent landmarks on the horizon of the Western motion picture are the films of Howard Hawks, Red River, The Big Sky, Rio Bravo, Rio Lobo.
Well, I think Westerns are either good or bad. Almost all the good directors that have tried a Western have made a good picture. George Stevens, Shane, everything that Ford has made. I think they studied the West, had a knowledge of it, and they enjoyed getting out of doors. I hear a lot about these new techniques and everything, and we stopped using them in 1927, so I don't think that they're new at all. I think if you're any good, you can tell a story with a perfectly simple camera placed at eye height, and then you don't have to use tricks and stunts, which, in my opinion, make it unreal. 5 or 6 good scenes, and as I said before, don't offend the audience the rest of the time. Show them some good scenery, show them some characters, have some fun. With each succeeding Western, I've had more and more fun, more and more laughs, more and more comedy in them. We start out as though it's going to be a very serious picture, and then pretty soon we try to amuse the audience, to entertain the audience. And it's been very successful.
Even when it is achieving its most direct effects, the Western depends upon most sophisticated technical complexity. Just as much as the classic Greek drama, it produces its gods from the machine. And that machine is the camera. In every movie Western buff, there is something of the child. And not only of the child's awe of the myths and legends of the West, but of the technical magic of the motion picture which imprisoned that folklore. Besides big talkies and home movies, a third revolutionary giant began to glow on the Western horizon. The TV Western originated on sets like these. But its destination was the homes, hearts, and hearts of millions of people around the world. It grew its own giants, who season after season galloped regularly across Persian carpets, scarred linoleum, and grass mats in living rooms across the globe. One of the greatest champions of them all, of course, is Bonanza, which not only struck one of the richest loads in the medium's history, but continues to set a record run on TV's time bank.
So we keep the door in the clear.
Over there, we're gunning this way. If he comes this way, we can pick him up here in this Griswold and come into an override.
Okay. Well, just stand about there.
In each of its manifestations, a silent movie, sound picture, or television film, The classic Western seems to attract one or two outstandingly dominant talents, either dramatic or directorial, that decisively direct its development. Producer David Dordort has been to television what such men as Ford and Hawks have been to the theater screen. His influence on the medium began early with the still record-breaking Bonanza and has continued uninterruptedly through such series as High Chaparral.
In television, because of the fact that you must tell it and tell it straight, you know, and as it is in a sense, to hold on to that audience, you tell it with a lot more clarity and logic. As a matter of fact, I say the two greatest tools in telling any kind of drama are logic and clarity. In other words, the logic of the story must be so clear that any audience knows what you're talking about, even an audience that doesn't understand the language or knows nothing about the American West. Clarity in terms of the identification of the individual with the story that you're telling, you see. And television really has been a discipline, if you will, a self-imposed discipline due to the shortage of time and money, on people like myself, or other people like myself who have done it, to tell the Western in as close to classic fashion as it is possible to do.
Whether on the small screen or the large, the simple Western calls for king-size economics. An expanse of space implies an expanse of action, and in the industry's terms, expanse and expense are usually synonymous. But if the Western generally calls for top budgets, it also calls forth motion picture's top talents, and it gets them. Just as the movies and such locations as Old Tucson convert actuality into legend, the professional movie maker has a further task: to convert legend into film art. Paul Newman, both as actor and director, has brought one of the most versatile talents in screen history to the construction of film. His roles have not been confined to one dimension, ranging from an East Coast slum boy boxing champion through a tortured Tennessee Williams protagonist, to a small-town pool hustler, or a professional racetrack winner. But throughout his career, he has returned again and again to the Western. Interviewed on the Old Tucson set of Pocket Money, a leading professional actor turns a penetrating eye on today's Western as seen from a player's point of view.
The obligation is always the same. The actor has to go to the character as much as he can comfortably. Sometimes that isn't always possible. But I have not found any limitations, no. You create whatever character you want. There are generally key words. In Butch, there was a word affable that made sense to me. In Pocket Money, his ex-wife calls him a baby. All of those are little kickoffs that you try to use to, get your motor turning over as an actor. I think the Westerns that I've done always had very interesting people in them. Butch was very special, and it was what I called a very verifiable adult fairy tale. I think one of the reasons that the Western may have been more successful it is less compatible with having a message. It is adventure, it is entertainment, it is a certain kind of physical kind of excitement to most of them. Yeah, you'll get a shoot 'em up, and no one's going to tell him what life is like in the ghetto, and it's probably very comforting. In the great day of opiates, I don't know why the Westerns shouldn't serve as that.
Opiate or psychic energizer, the Western seems to have established a permanent place in the imagination of the world's inhabitants. The men who held the keys that unlocked a new storehouse of legend were as varied and diverse as the audiences they appealed to. Their products ranged from the grandiose to the triple feature grind, from the epic to the ephemeral. But big or little, Western films seem to have certain enduring common elements. Theirs is a curious wedding of the authentic and the spurious, Reality coupled with the machinery of illusion. The classic Western is America's contribution to world folklore, and each showing of a great outdoor motion picture turns the viewer into a temporary Columbus, rediscovering the American dream. For the brave new world, a brave new myth. Freedom, which was once an American invention, may be the key to it. Freedom of space through the vast surge of earth and sky. Freedom from time by the constant recapturing of the past into a perpetually vigorous present tense. Freedom to hope that valor does conquer viciousness, that honesty prevails over deceit. The traditional early Western often ended with the hero kissing his girl, or sometimes his horse, and riding off into the sunset. But the virtues he stood for never rode off. They ride again and again and again across the screens, large and small, of the world. The sun will never set on that empire of the unfettered spirit, which is the true territory of the classic Western.